Okay, welcome to another installment of Minister's Message. I'm Ray Goodship, and I'm glad to know I'm freshly showered and shaved just uh, for your sake. Anyway, I'm going to read a passage uh, from Matthew and talk a little bit about the body of Christ, the body politic, the um, our community. And so, first reading from Matthew. When the Son of Man comes in his glory with all his angels, he will sit on his royal throne, and the people of all nations will be brought before him, and he will separate them as shepherds separate their sheep from their goats. He will place the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "My Father has blessed you. Come and receive the kingdom that was prepared for you before the world was created. When I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was a stranger, you welcomed me, and when I was naked, you gave me clothes. And when I was sick, you took care of me, and when I was in jail, you visited me." Then the ones who please the Lord will ask, "When did we give you something to eat or drink? When did we welcome you as a stranger, or give you clothes to wear, or visit you while you were sick or in jail?" And the king will answer, "Whenever you did it for any of my people, no matter how unimportant they seemed, you did it for me." Then the king will say to those on his left, "Get away from me. You are under God's curse. Go into the everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. I was hungry, but you did not give me anything to eat, and I was thirsty, but you did not give me anything to drink. I was a stranger, but you did not welcome me, and I was naked, but you did not give me any clothes to wear. I was sick and in jail, but you did not take care of me." Then the people will ask, "Lord, when did we fail to help you when you were hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in jail?" And the king will say to them, "Whenever you failed to help any of my people, no matter how unimportant they seemed, you failed to do it for me." Okay, so it's a little bit of a difficult passage to hear if we take it um, literally, but it's certainly not metaphor either. I mean, this is a very direct, unambiguous commandment from Jesus. Um, Jesus worked to gather in, to collect all those outsiders into his community. That was such a big part of his um, just way of being and the way he walked on the earth. That he was always drawing people into the body. And for him and for us, the body is not complete if there are members outside the body. And our policies and practices continue and perhaps increasingly abandon people, and sometimes intentionally and willfully keeping people outside. And there are other stories in the gospel, of course, where uh, Jesus has many arguments with Pharisees, with the lawgivers, and around the Sabbath and healing. Jesus argues for a little bit, but then he just goes ahead and heals, right? If you think of the story of the man with the withered hand, he argues for a moment or two, trying to convince the Pharisees, and then he just gives up and just heals immediately um, um, the man with the withered hand, and he becomes part of the body. It brings him back into the fold as a full participant. And in our culture, no one's going to argue against healing an individual person. We feel compassion for people, and so when we know of someone who's hurting or in trouble, an individual, or um, our hearts go out. But as a group, as a public opinion, as policy, it 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 really kind of scares us sometimes because, well, it's costly and it's it also demands something of us. But Jesus' gospel is about a society that is organized for the least, rather than a society that is designed to maintain or even increase the advantage for the first, for the powerful, for the affluent. We forget, or we try to avoid the reality that Jesus was primarily talking about justice and community and being part of the body and being part of inclusive an inclusive community where 5,000 people all get fed. It's not about the miracle of a magic trick. It's about everyone getting all they need, and yet there's still more. And so there is abundance, there is bounty, there is more than we need, as long as there's access. So if you think back to that Matthew passage and you think about that list, you can almost put a face to every to every need. I can think of somebody who is hungry. We fed people yesterday on Tuesday. I can think of people who are hungry. I can think of people who are sick, who don't have access to all the things that we take for granted. Homeless people, those things come to mind. It's a reality for many. And so if we let ourselves imagine these people, we can also imagine them being fed and receiving clothing and participating fully in the body. And so how do we do that? How do we ensure that everyone participates in the body, participates in all that our communities and our towns and our neighborhoods have to offer? Currently, there are a lot of policies and laws that are being rolled out to help families and Canadians and businesses. And I'm really encouraged to hear so many ask about the other. So what about our First Nations friends? What about the seniors and elderly? What about people who are homeless? What about people who are addicted or have mental health issues? What about all these other people who are on the edges? And so I do take some hope out of that. But then it also makes me think about how our systems primarily exclude the least, and then we have to make particular provisions for them. And so it makes me also wonder about all our policies and structures and laws and the way things just happen in our culture, that kind of rig the game. And because we intuitively know that much of the time there are a lot of people who are forgotten, who are on the edges and never get a voice, are not part of the body, do not have access for one reason or the other. So I think as a faith community, we're called to continue to ask the questions, to expect everyone's inclusion, to expect that we put an extension on the table and more chairs, more place settings. Again, you can see how we can respond in a massive way right now to the need when we we want to, when our attention is drawn to it. And so, can we reorganize our policies and our laws and our culture on the other side of this in a way in which fewer of our folks are vulnerable for the next time? The next time something happens, whatever it is, and it's going to be a next time, and not just in the crisis, but just from a day-to-day living. Are there lessons to be learned from this time? Almost every conversation I have with someone right now, we're all asking that question. How are things going to be different on the other side? I hope things will be different. Almost every conversation, we hope we go back to the way things were, from a comfort and a predictability kind of way. But there's also a sense that we all want things to be a little different when we come back. That the hungry will the hungry will be fed, and the thirsty will be given something to drink, and the naked will be clothed, and some way we'll find a way to bring everyone to the table. And that's what communion is about. It's the drama of abundance. Jesus gives everything away and holds nothing back without exception. And can we take a page out of that and embody that kind of generosity and abundance as a culture as well as individuals? We'll see. We are not alone. We live in God's world, and we have each other, and we're in this together. So peace be with you, and we'll talk soon. Blessings.